Antinatalism is related to immortalism because they tackle the same issue, the value of life. They come to the opposite conclusions though. Benatar is proving to people that their birth was bad for them, with his asymmetry argument. It goes like that. Our life has pains and pleasures. It is always good to not create pains. The best way of doing it is to not create people. Even though, as a side effect, you are also not creating pleasures, but not creating pleasures is not bad in this case, because nobody is missing out. Nobody is sad because he is not receiving all those pleasures. It creates a paradoxical conclusion. Even if my life is very pleasant, but I had only one suffering in it, it spoils the whole life. It wasn't worth for me to be born. Obviously we disagree. We consider our birth the best event. We thank our parents. I think the paradox originates because of different ways of calculating value. Benatar considers pains and pleasures in isolation from the life, but normally we regard them as part of one integral life. So if I had one pain and 10 pleasures, I subtract them. And I say that the goodness of my life, in its integrity, is +9. It's a very good life. But Benatar separates pleasures from my life, pains from my life, and applies different computations. So when he says, it is always good to not create pains, we would say, no, there are no pains in this sense. They were redeemed by the pleasures. The pleasures made up for the pains. Maybe his calculation would work at the level of the society. If we have one miserable person and 10 happy people, we cannot simply subtract them. Even if some collectivist says that this society is happy, it has a value of +9, but we are individualistic people. We feel that something is wrong here, that this single miserable person makes the whole society not worthy of existing. And Benatar is moving this calculation down to the level of my brain. So he makes it hyper-individualistic. Not only am I a single individual, but every feeling of mine is a single individual and should be regarded separately, and we cannot just subtract them. I don't see how it relates to anything in the real life, because even if I go through a tough period of my life, I don't regret being born. And even if I do, people around me support me and encourage me to push through, because my life is good overall. We hope for the best. The question is whether antinatalism is good or bad for immortalism. Because on one hand, it essentially says life is bad, which is detrimental. But on the other hand, if we want our civilization to continue without making children, we need to make existing people immortal, which is good. Because antinatalists don't advocate shortening existing lives. They only argue for non-procreation. I think it's because of political reasons though, because I don't see the difference. For example, when regular people reject the asymmetry argument, antinatalists acknowledge that, and they say that those regular people just don't understand our calculations. They're just not getting something. But when antinatalists themselves are asked, well, what about shortening existing lives then? They reply, no, we are against that. Why? Because we already have some values in our brains which propel us into the future. And it is good to just go along those values, continue living. And why wouldn't you just apply the same logic to yourself and say those values which propel you into the future are a mistake? You're just not getting something. But the lesson is how brazenly you can push your agenda despite the common sense. Benatar is not doing it as boldly as he could. He's hiding his face. But His brazenness is inspiring. Maybe immortalists could learn from it and apply the same strategy when arguing against people who like death. So if somebody considers his potential immortality a curse, we can shove our philosophy into his face and say, no, it's good for you, take it, you just don't understand something.